I lent my brother $6,500 for emergency bills, and 2 weeks later he was on Instagram flexing like he'd just won the lottery. My name is Sarah, I'm 29, and I am not stupid. At least, I didn't think I was until I saw that post. He was leaning back in a VIP booth, one arm draped over the back of the couch, the other holding up a glass of champagne. On his feet? A pair of designer sneakers that cost more than my monthly rent. The caption said, "Sometimes you gotta treat yourself, life's too short." With a smirking emoji and money bag icons. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. That money was supposed to be for overdue rent, utilities, and medical bills. His words. The way his voice had cracked over the phone when he'd said it, the way he'd sworn he was desperate, had hooked straight into my chest. I'd emptied my savings for him. When I didn't respond to his post or his texts that night, he finally sent, "Relax, you'll survive." No apology, no explanation. Just that. I didn't reply. That was the moment something in me shifted. I decided to let him think he'd won, that I was the same gullible big sister I'd always been. I went to bed with my phone on silent. The next morning, I woke up to 45 missed calls. Every morning since then starts the same. Red notifications, voicemail bubbles, frantic messages piling up. And I still haven't called him back. Before I tell you what he said when I finally faced him, and what I did after I walked out of his apartment, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story about family, money, and betrayal really travels. 2 weeks before the Instagram flex and the 45 missed calls, it was just a Thursday night, and I was folding laundry on my couch when my phone rang. His name didn't show on the screen yet in this part of the story. To me, he was simply my brother, the person I'd spent my whole life defending. I almost let the call go to voicemail. We hadn't talked much lately, mostly because every conversation turned into him needing something, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hey," I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder. "You okay?" What came back wasn't his usual cocky tone, it was a broken, shaky whisper. "Sarah, I'm screwed, I need help, please don't hang up." My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" I asked. On the other end I could hear traffic, a door slamming, then silence. He took a ragged breath. "I'm behind on everything. Rent, utilities, some medical stuff. They're gonna shut off my power. My landlord's threatening to change the locks. I've been trying, but I can't catch up. I need a lifeline, please." Every word was designed to hit exactly where he knew I was weak. The part of me that remembered him as a scrawny kid hiding behind me on the first day of school. The part of me that had spent years stepping in front of our parents' anger so he wouldn't have to. "How much are you behind?" I asked, already pulling up my banking app. "A lot," he said, then hesitated, like he didn't want to say it. 6,500. I know it's insane. I know. But if I don't pay it, I'm done. $6,500. That was my emergency fund. Not some abstract savings, but my security blanket. 3 months of rent. The little buffer between me and panic. "That's all of my savings," I whispered. He didn't miss a beat. "I'll pay you back, I swear. I've got extra shifts lined up, and there's a bonus coming. Just spot me this one time, okay? You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death." Life or death. He let the words hang there, heavy and manipulative, though I didn't see it as manipulation yet. I heard him sniff, like he was trying not to cry. "I'm so ashamed I let it get this bad," he added, voice cracking just enough to sound real. "You're the only person I trust." That sentence sliced right through my logic. The only person I trust. I chewed my lip, staring at the number on my screen as if it might magically grow. "You'll really pay me back?" I asked. "Every cent," he promised. I'll start next month. You know I've always come through for you. That was the thing. I knew he hadn't always come through for me. There were the forgotten small paybacks. The I'll get you back later dinners. The my card isn't working. Emergencies. Little red flags I'd folded into excuses because that's what you do with family, right? You cover. You justify. You tell yourself this time it's different. I took a deep breath and hit transfer. The number in my account dropped to a sickeningly small figure. It's done, I said. You have it. On the other end, he let out a shaky laugh of relief. You're a lifesaver. I swear I won't forget this. You just saved me from losing everything. In that moment, I chose to believe him. I wanted to believe that my sacrifice meant something, that I was pulling my brother back from the edge. I had no idea I was just funding a different kind of disaster. Tell me honestly, if your own blood called you, swore it was life or death, and asked for your entire savings, would you say no? Stay tuned for part 3, because the way I found out the truth still makes my stomach turn. A week passed after I sent the money. On the surface, nothing changed. I still went to work, still meal prepped cheap lunches to make my new broke reality stretch, still checked my account 3 times a day and winced at the balance. My brother texted a couple of times. Thank you again. I'll start paying you back soon. You seriously saved me. No proof of any actual struggle, just words. The old me would have taken that as reassurance. The version of me you're listening to now hears them as rehearsed lines. The crack came on a lazy Sunday afternoon. I was scrolling through Instagram, half bored, half distracted, when his username popped up on my feed. For a second, I almost scrolled past it. Then my brain registered the picture. He was standing in front of a mirror in some high-end sneaker store, one foot propped up to showcase a fresh pair of designer shoes, the logo practically screaming at me from the screen. The caption? Emergency solved. Had to bless myself for surviving. Winking emoji. Fire emoji. My thumb froze above the screen. That couldn't be right. I clicked onto his profile. The next photo was a boomerang of champagne flutes clinking in a dimly lit lounge. Bills paid, vibe restored, the text overlay said. Another showed a takeout bag from a trendy, expensive restaurant downtown. Stress eating, don't judge, he'd written. In every picture, he looked carefree, relaxed, pleased with himself. My chest tightened and my vision tunneled. Every image was a slap in the face. I remembered his voice whispering about medical bills and shut-off notices, while he stood somewhere noisy, probably on the same street where he now posed in designer shoes. My first instinct was denial. Maybe these were old photos. Maybe he was just posting late. So I checked the timestamps. 2 days ago. Yesterday. An hour ago. I clicked on his story. There he was. Again. In the same sneakers. Laughing with people I didn't recognize. A bottle of liquor on the table that cost more than my weekly groceries. My heart pounded so hard my hands started shaking. Are you kidding me? I whispered into my empty apartment. Every part of me wanted to comment something brutal under the post, to call him out publicly, to scream, "Emergency bills, huh?" But something stopped me. Instead, I took screenshots. All of them. The new shoes, the champagne, the caption about blessing himself. The receipts, literally and figuratively. That's when I called Jessica. Hey, what's up? She answered, cheerful. You busy? I asked, my voice coming out tighter than I meant it to. I need you to come over. It's about my brother. There was a pause, and then her tone shifted. I'll be there in 20. When she arrived, I shoved my phone into her hand before she even sat down. She swiped through the photos, her eyebrows climbing with each one. Wait, she said slowly. Is this recent? Check the dates, I rasped. These are from this week, from after he called me crying about emergency bills. You know, The ones I emptied my savings to cover. Jessica exhaled sharply through her nose. Are you serious right now? He took your last 6.5 grand and he's out here cosplaying a rapper? I paced across the room, words tumbling out. Was I stupid? Did I miss some huge sign? Am I just the biggest idiot on earth? You're not an idiot, she said, but there was a hard edge in her voice. You're trusting, and he's taking advantage of that. Again. That word, again, hit a nerve, because it wasn't the first time. I remembered the time in college when he'd borrowed my laptop and sold it to pay off a friend. The time he'd crash somewhere, eat my food, and disappear right before rent was due. Little betrayals I'd brushed off as, he's young, or, he's just struggling. I'd always been the one who covered for him when our parents complained. I was the one who said, he's just figuring it out, he'll get there. As those memories looped through my mind, something like a pattern started to form, and I didn't like the shape of it. We need to know what he's really doing, Jessica said finally. Because this isn't just about the money anymore. This is about the story he told you versus the life he's actually living. What do you suggest? Hire a private investigator? I snapped. I'm broke, remember? She rolled her eyes, but she was already unlocking her own phone. Social media is free. Let's start there. People love to overshare. That's how the investigation started. 2 women on a couch, scrolling through posts, geotags, tagged photos, and following digital breadcrumbs. With each new piece of content we found, the knot in my stomach tightened. By the time we finished that first deep dive, my brother didn't look like someone drowning in bills. He looked like someone swimming just fine, in other people's money. Have you ever realized, all at once, that a person you love has a completely different life than the one they sold you? Stay with me for part 4, because the next people we talk to crack this story wide open. The deeper we dug, the less the broke, desperate little brother version of him made sense. Jessica found tagged photos I'd never seen. My brother at rooftop parties, at poker nights, leaning over tables thick with cards and cash. He made the same gesture in almost every shot. Arms wide, chin tilted up, like the world owed him something. Look at this, Jessica muttered, zooming in on a group shot from a month before his emergency. There he was, holding what was clearly a wad of bills, grinning at the camera. The caption, posted by some guy I didn't know, read, "My man always finds a way." Who is that? I asked. Ethan, Jessica said after tapping through his profile. Lives in the same city as your brother, into parties, crypto, and opportunities. This is the kind of friend that says, I can flip your money, and then disappears. My stomach rolled. There was another recurring tag, a girl named Melissa, with pictures from the same bars, the same poker tables, the same late-night diners. In one video, he was laughing and saying, "Come on, double or nothing, I'm good for it." I didn't recognize the context, but I recognized the pattern. Risk, bluffing, confidence, fake confidence paid for by someone else. He's not just irresponsible, I said quietly. He's reckless. Jessica looked up at me. We need to talk to these people, Ethan and Melissa. They might know where that 6.5 grand went. And you think they'll just tell us? I asked. If we show up as the angry sister? She shrugged. We don't go as angry. We go as worried. Slightly clueless. People talk when they think you're in the dark. That's how, a few days later, we ended up at a noisy coffee shop across town, watching the door like we were in some low-budget crime show. Ethan arrived first, tall, confident, with that careless swagger I've grown to hate in men who never fully pay for their mistakes. Melissa came right after, glancing around like she didn't want to be seen. They both greeted Jessica first. She'd messaged them saying I was worried something was wrong and needed to understand what my brother had gotten into. Thanks for meeting us, I said, clasping my hands together so they wouldn't shake. I just, I feel like I don't know what's really going on with him anymore. Ethan leaned back in his chair, sizing me up. He said things were rough, he said. But he didn't go into detail. Rough? I repeated. He told me he was about to lose his place, that he couldn't pay his bills, that it was life or death. Melissa's eyes flickered. That tiny movement told me more than her words would. Look, she said, stirring her drink even though she hadn't put anything in it. He's had ups and downs. Who hasn't? Ethan cut in quickly. He hustles. It's not like he's just freeloading. He's been working, doing side gigs, making moves. What kind of moves? Jessica asked lightly, as if she were just making conversation. Crypto? Poker? Whatever people call fun now? Ethan smiled tightly. You know, opportunities. Nothing illegal, if that's what you're asking. I pulled up my phone and turned the screen so they could see the screenshots. The designer sneakers, the champagne, the captions. These were all taken after he told me he was drowning, I said. After I sent him $6,500, all of my savings. Does this look like someone paying off debts? Melissa's face paled. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'm not going to pretend I know what he did with your money, Ethan said finally. But I know he's been playing big lately, higher stakes. Talking about turning everything around in one big win. So he gambled with it, I said flatly. Or something like that. Melissa finally stopped stirring her drink. It's not just gambling, she said quietly. He hangs out with some guys who spot him at games or front him cash, and then he owes them. They aren't the forgiving kind. He started treating every dollar like it wasn't real. Something dark twisted in my chest. My brother hadn't just lied. He'd dragged me into whatever mess he was building. That emergency could easily become mine. Jessica glanced at me and then asked, Has he talked about being behind on rent? On actual bills? Or is that just the story he gives his family? Ethan looked away. He mentioned needing to show his sister that he was serious about changing. Said he just needed one last push to get ahead. The words rang in my ears. One last push. My savings. My future. So I was his last push, I said. His big cash infusion. Ethan didn't answer, which was answer enough. Melissa reached out, almost like she wanted to touch my hand, then thought better of it. For what it's worth, she said. He talks about you like you're a saint. Says you've always had his back. Says you see the best in him. My throat burned. Yeah, I said hoarsely. Maybe that was the problem. We left the coffee shop with more questions than answers, but one thing was crystal clear. The story my brother had told me about bills and emergencies was, at best, half true. At worst, it was a full-on con. As we walked back to the car, Jessica said quietly, You know he's going to keep doing this as long as there are no consequences, right? I stared at my reflection in the car window. Tired eyes, jaw clenched, phone clutched in my fist like a weapon. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. And anger has a way of sharpening into something much colder. Then maybe, I said slowly, it's time he finally experiences some consequences. If someone you loved kept writing you into their mess, at what point would you stop cleaning it up and start letting them fall? In part 5, I finally confront my brother. But what he says in that apartment changes everything about how far I'm willing to go. By the time I texted my brother asking if I could come over just to talk, my anger had cooled into something almost surgical. I wasn't going there to scream. I was going there to watch him lie to my face with all the receipts in my pocket. His apartment was smaller than I imagined, cluttered with expensive things that didn't match the peeling paint on the walls. A huge TV, 2 gaming consoles, a designer jacket tossed over the couch like it wasn't worth half of what I'd given him. He opened the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, stranger," he said, pulling me into a quick hug that I didn't fully return. "Come in. You want a drink?" "No," I said, stepping past him. "We need to talk." His smile faltered. "Okay. About what?" I sat down on the couch, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my voice came out calm and clear. "About the $6,500. About your emergency bills. And about these." I pulled out my phone and brought up the screenshots, one by one, sliding it across the table toward him. He looked down and his jaw clenched for a fraction of a second before he forced a laugh. "You're mad about Instagram?" he scoffed. "Seriously, Sarah, it's just flexing. Everyone does it." "Flexing?" I repeated. "You told me you were behind on rent, utilities, medical bills. You cried on the phone. You said it was life or death. Then you bought sneakers that cost more than my car payment and popped bottles like you're in a music video." He rolled his eyes. "Calm down. You're so dramatic. I paid some stuff. I just also wanted to enjoy life a little. It's not like it was your last dollar." "It was my last dollar," I said, my voice low. "That money was my safety net, my emergency fund. I emptied it because I thought you were in danger of losing everything, and you told me you'd pay me back." "I will," he snapped, suddenly defensive. "You know how it is. Money's tight, but I'll get it to you. You act like I robbed you at gunpoint." "You lied to me," I said. "You turned my concern into your casino. You told your friends you just needed one last push. That push was my future. Do you get that?" For a moment, something like guilt flickered across his face. Then he leaned back and smirked. "Look, you're fine. You've always had your life together. Savings, plans, whatever. You'll survive." I needed it more. There it was, the sentence that would echo in my head later, right before the Instagram text. "You'll survive." Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was more like the quiet, clean sound of a thread breaking. "You think that's how this works?" I asked slowly. "You just decide you need my money more than I do, make up an emergency, and I should just— what? Be grateful I get to be your personal bailout?" He shrugged, as if it was obvious. "That's what family is for." Jessica, sitting in the corner of the room pretending to scroll her phone, finally looked up. "Family is for honesty," she said. "Not manipulation." He shot her a glare. "This is between me and my sister. She's here because I needed someone to make sure I didn't fall for your act again," I said. "I talked to Ethan and Melissa. I saw the poker videos, the parties, the caption about always finding a way. Was I your way this time?" His bravado started to crack. "You had no right to go behind my back," he said, his voice rising. "You're invading my privacy." "Your privacy?" I repeated, incredulous. "You posted half of this publicly. The rest you bragged about to people who don't owe you a single thing. But me? The one who emptied her account? I get lies." He stood up, pacing. "You don't get it," he snapped. "I'm under a lot of pressure. I'm trying to get ahead. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. You wouldn't understand. You've always played it safe." That line again. I wouldn't understand. As if responsibility was some kind of moral flaw. "So what's your plan?" I asked. "Run up debts, borrow, gamble, and if it goes wrong, call me crying again? How many times do I have to pay for your lessons?" "You don't have to do anything," he shot back. "You chose to help. I didn't force you." The worst part was, technically, he was right. He hadn't forced me. He'd just orchestrated the entire situation so that saying no would have felt like abandoning him. That's the twisted genius of manipulation. You're always the one who flips the switch. You just don't realize someone else installed all the wiring. "Okay," I said quietly, standing up. You're right about one thing. I chose to help you. And I'm choosing something else now. Suspicion flickered in his eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means, from this moment on, I treat that money like a debt, not a favor, I said. I'm giving you 30 days to pay back at least half. After that, I start making sure everyone you owed the truth to actually has it. Your landlord, mom and dad, the people who think you're just having a tough time, your boss. And if I have to, I'll take you to small claims court. Every screenshot, every text, every transfer is already backed up. His face went white. You wouldn't do that, he said. You're not like that. You're right again, I said. I wasn't like that. But I'm done being your safety net. If you want to play big, you can pay big. He stepped closer, anger flaring. You're going to ruin my life over some shoes and a few drinks? No, I said. I'm going to stop you from ruining mine. The room went silent. Finally, he scoffed, trying to cling to his old power. Relax, he muttered. You'll survive. I watched him say it this time. Watched the careless shrug, the dismissive little half-smile. I memorized it, because it was the moment my hurt hardened into resolve. Yeah, I said, heading for the door. I will. The question is, will you? As I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. You're overreacting. You'd never actually do anything. I didn't respond. I just let him think he'd won. What would you do if your own brother looked you in the face and treated your entire life savings like a minor inconvenience? In part 6, I stop warning him and start acting. That's when the missed calls begin. I didn't talk to my brother for 3 days after that confrontation. Not a text, not a call, not a like on social media. I muted his stories, turned off notifications, and did something I should have done years ago. I stopped making his crisis my full-time job. But I didn't forget my 30-day deadline. While he went on posting as if nothing had happened, a new watch here, another night out there. I got to work. Step 1 was brutal but necessary. I told our parents the truth. For years, I'd edited the story for them. He's trying, I'd say. He just has bad luck. This time, I printed the bank transfer, the screenshots of his emergency, and the pictures from his Instagram flex. I laid them on the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad's face hardened in that way that used to scare us when we were kids. He told us he was barely scraping by, my mom whispered. He said he was eating ramen every night. Maybe he is, I said. On the nights he's not eating at places I can't afford. My dad studied the images for a long time, then looked up at me. And you gave him all your savings? He asked. Every cent, I said, because I thought if I didn't, he'd be out on the street. Silence stretched between us. Finally, my dad said, You know this isn't really about the money? I know, I said quietly. It's about the fact that he keeps writing the same story and expecting us to play the same roles. What do you want to do? My mom asked, eyes shining with tears. It hit me then. They'd been manipulated too, just in different ways. I'm not bailing him out anymore, I said, and I'm not covering for him. If he asks you for money, I want you to ask to see his bills, his pay stubs, his bank statements. And if he claims I'm being unfair, I want you to know exactly why I'm drawing a line. He's going to say we're turning against him, my mom murmured. He already does, I said. But at some point, loving someone means you stop cushioning them from their own impact. Step 2 was more strategic. I pulled my credit report and froze it. If my brother decided to get creative with my information, and given the direction his choices were headed, I wasn't ruling anything out. I wanted that door locked. I updated passwords, added 2-factor authentication to everything, and put alerts on my accounts. It felt paranoid and empowering all at once. Step 3 was the one that crossed the line, at least in his mind. I emailed his landlord. Not to ruin his life, to verify whether there had ever been an emergency at all. "Hi," I wrote. "My name is Sarah, I'm his sister. He told me a few weeks ago that he was months behind on rent and at risk of eviction. I helped him financially based on that representation. I'm trying to understand if that emergency was real. I don't need details, but can you confirm if his account was in serious arrears?" The reply came the next day. "Hi, Sarah. Without going into specifics, I can say there has been no formal eviction process initiated, and his balance is currently up to date. Best, landlord. Up to date. So whatever my brother had done with my money, it hadn't been to catch up on rent at the last second." I added that email to my growing folder of proof. Step 4 was my favorite. Small claims court research. I spent a Saturday morning reading articles, downloading forms, and learning phrases like breach of verbal contract and unjust enrichment. $6,500 is not pocket change. Technically, in most places, it's absolutely within the limit you can sue for without a lawyer. I didn't know yet if I'd go that far, but just knowing I could was a strange comfort. That's when the 45 missed calls a morning started. At first, it was just a couple of texts. "Hey, can we talk?" I think we both said things we didn't mean. I ignored them. Then it escalated. "Why are you talking to Ethan? He told me you interrogated him. Did you seriously talk to my landlord? What is wrong with you?" Each time my phone buzzed, I put it face down and went back to whatever I was doing. Work. Dishes. Breathing. On day 10 at 2:14 a.m., my ringtone shattered the silence of my dark bedroom. I squinted at the screen. Him again. I let it ring out. 30 seconds later, it rang again. And again. And again. My phone lit up with his name over and over like some kind of alarm. I flipped it to Do Not Disturb and went back to sleep. In the morning, I woke up to 45 missed calls and 12 voicemails. My heart pounded as I pressed play on the first message. "Sarah, come on, pick up. This is childish." Delete. "Are you seriously icing me out because I bought some shoes? You said I could pay you back over time." Delete. "Okay, wow. So now mom and dad are on my case? You had to drag them into it? You know how they get." Delete. "You emailed my landlord? Are you trying to get me kicked out? You're sick." Delete. The voicemails started out self-righteous and indignant, then slid into panicked. "They're cutting me off," he said in one. "Mom said she won't give me another cent. She told me to talk to Sarah." "What did you tell them?" In another. "These guys I owe aren't playing. I need time, and you just blew everything up." And then, finally, the one that made my chest ache despite everything he'd done. "I know I screwed up, okay?" he said, voice hoarse. "I shouldn't have lied, I just didn't know how else to get what I needed. You've always saved me, and now you're acting like you don't even care if something happens to me." I paused that one halfway through, thumb hovering over the delete button. Did I care? Of course I did. That was the cruel core of all of this. Loving someone doesn't make them safe to trust. It just makes the betrayal sharper. But caring about someone and continuing to let them burn you are two very different things. I saved that voicemail and closed the app. Day 28 came. Still no money, no payment plan. Just more calls, more messages, more attempts to guilt me out of my boundaries. So I sent one text. Just one. "You have 48 hours to transfer at least half of what you owe," I wrote. "If not, I move forward with my options. No more discussions. I'm done being your backup plan." His response was instant. "You're not serious." I didn't answer. The next afternoon, a partial payment hit my account. $1,000. No explanation, no apology, just a transaction. For the first time since this started, I smiled. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was proof of something important. He could pay when he was scared enough. Fear, I realized, was the only thing he respected more than easy money. Would you push a family member this far just to make them finally respect your boundaries and your bank account? In part 7, he finally hits a wall he can't talk his way around, and I have to decide if revenge stops at money or goes deeper. The $1,000 he sent wasn't a turning point, it was a delay tactic. 2 days later, he was back on Instagram, still out, still vibing, just without the obvious flex pieces like I'd scared him into hiding the evidence, not changing the behavior. Comments had shifted from praise to concern. You good? Heard some stuff. And I realized I wasn't the only one who saw cracks forming, so on day 30 I filed the small claims paperwork. Plaintiff, Sarah, last name. Defendant, Brian, last name. Seeing our names facing off like that hurt, but I attached everything. The transfer, the Texas calling it a loan, his promises to repay, the partial payment that proved he knew it was a debt. When he got served, the calls exploded. You sued me? He yelled in one voicemail. You actually dragged your own brother to court? In the next, anger gave way to fear. If this hits my record, I'm done. No apartments, no loans. Do you want me homeless? Even in panic, he still tried to make this my cruelty instead of his consequence. While we waited for the court date, his life shrank. Our parents stopped sending money like we'd agreed. His landlord stopped letting late payments slide now that he knew there was someone paying attention. Ethan and Melissa backed off. When your name is attached to court notices and angry collectors, you stop being the fun friend and start being bad news. His next vague Instagram story about fake people and family betraying you for clout was almost funny. I didn't need to clap back. The people who mattered already knew the truth. The night before the hearing, he showed up at my door looking wrecked. Hoodie up, dark circles, all that swagger stripped away. We need to talk, he said. I kept him in the doorway. Boundaries. Literally. You have 5 minutes, I told him. He pulled out a crumpled bank slip. I scraped together $3,000, he said. If I give you this now and set up payments for the rest, will you drop the case? If this sticks, I'm screwed. For once, there was no smirk, just a guy who finally understood that I wasn't bluffing. Why now? I asked. Because you're scared, or because you get what you did? He let out a humorless laugh. Both. I kept telling myself you'd chill out, that you'd never go this far. Then I watched everything fall apart. Mom and Dad cutting me off, people avoiding me, landlord on my neck. And I realized, this is the first time you didn't fold. Twisted as it was, that was the closest thing to respect he'd given me in years. Here's how this goes, I said. We still show up tomorrow. I tell the judge we've reached a payment agreement and ask to dismiss without prejudice. You hand me the $3,000 now and we sign a notarized plan for the rest. You miss one payment without a real emergency and I refile. No warnings, no speeches. His eyes filled with tears. You'd really give me another chance? No, I said. I'm giving myself a clean conscience, not you a free pass. The next day, we stood side by side in court while he signed the agreement. When the judge asked if I was satisfied, I said yes. Not because it made us square, but because it meant I'd finally chosen myself over family guilt. Months later, the payments aren't perfect, but they arrive. Sometimes it's a couple hundred, sometimes it's $50 with a note. I know it's not much, but I'm trying. He has a boring, steady job now and sends our parents pay stubs instead of excuses. His Instagram is quieter. No VIP booths, no sneakers worth rent, just memes and pictures of takeout and the occasional cheap home-cooked meal. One random Tuesday, he texted, I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I really am. I'm trying to be someone you wouldn't regret helping, even if you never do again. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I hope you mean that. There are no more bailouts. You get one brother and one sister. I'm done being your safety net. I'm my own backup now. Do I forgive him? Mostly. Do I trust him like before? No. And that's the point. This isn't a fairy tale reset. It's a new contract with myself about what I will and won't tolerate, even from blood. So let me ask you, if someone you love turned your kindness into their personal ATM, where would your line be? And once you finally crossed it, would you stop at getting your money back? Or would you rewrite the entire way they're allowed to exist in your life?